Hello, fellow artists. Welcome to episode 7 of TED Talks Art. So I've got my coffee in hand, sitting back in my chair. I'm relaxed, I'm chill, and I'm ready to go here. This is kind of therapeutic for me. I almost feel like this is just an elaborate setup just to talk to myself. And I'm actually talking to myself as much as I am, if not more so, talking to the rest of you. And this topic in particular, I'm definitely talking to myself. And it's that feeling that every artist has of doubt. Maybe this is a carryover from the previous episode a little bit. But, we are inundated with all this amazing art. And at some point we'll feel, wow, there's so many better artists than me. Is my art good enough? And if not, should I give up? And when you feel that way, give up. That's it. Talk to you next time. No. I think part of it is it's very natural to feel that way. We're only human. But I think the core of it is, and what is a common thing that we all share, is that the art that we do is very personal. Because every person is unique. And how we go about things, some consciously, some subconsciously, it's just a representation of who you are. And I think that's the most important thing, because then why else would we do it? If we're trying to be a carbon copy of someone, we're always going to be a pale imitation. And it's not natural because it's not you. We've all heard probably a similar kind of quote. I can't remember who originally said it, but don't be Leonardo da Vinci, or don't be Jim Lee. Be you, John Smith, because there's only one you. And that's speaking to something inherently deeper in respect to the art that we do. And for that reason, it also allows us some freedom and gives us some hope. Because if we base everything and categorize on, technical skill or knowledge of a certain genre or something like that, then a lot of us, including myself, will lose to others who fare better with that kind of standard of measuring, I guess. But I think the way to perceive it is just like everything else in life and in entertainment. Great example is we are completely immersed and surrounded by music. I don't know anyone who doesn't enjoy music. So ask yourself, the bands, the singers, the musicians that you love to listen to, are they technically the best guitarist, who have classical training and have clean picking styles, and vocalists who have, 4-octave range and perfect formally trained vibrato? No, of course not. And even the musicians that do aren't necessarily the most popular. So it comes down to something more personal, and usually they're passionate about something and it comes through in their music. And usually when you're passionate about something, you tend to understand yourself better, and in that case they pick the appropriate type of music or style of music or chord progression or whatever it may be, and they're playing to their strengths and understanding their weaknesses, yet through that, regardless of the strengths and the weaknesses, they're tapping into something that's very personal, and it's usually because they enjoy it. They enjoy the style of music, and they enjoy, or it's important to them what they're speaking or writing about if they do the lyrics. And our art is the same way. I think the important thing is definitely, the short answer is no, don't give up, because as others have said, you are cheating the world of what you have to offer them. And it's not this has to be this grand statement behind that, like, oh, I have so much to offer the entire world. It's more like, even if one or two people appreciate what you do, then that's worth it, right? If you don't do it, then you're robbing them of what they could enjoy or take from that. We don't all have to be, have over 1 million followers on Instagram or, YouTube, or have a certain amount of accolades to their name and IPs to their art. I mean, that's great, but for a lot of us, that's not necessarily the end goal. And in many cases, the ones who are well known, that wasn't inherently their main reason. It was the love of the art that they do. And that's what, again, we all share in common. I think the real struggle, and I think part of it is generational, and that is also tied into the changing environment and our culture and technology, all that sort of stuff that goes with it. But what is, I think, common is maybe this disconnect between what we enjoy doing and what we expect to receive from it outside of our own personal satisfaction as artists. That, I think, is a big part of what may kind of feed or kind of misconstrue the cause and effect of this feeling of my art's not good enough and should I give up. Here's what I mean. If, let's say, you're doing what you love, but you don't necessarily want to practice fundamentals, or you only want to practice to a certain extent, that's okay as long as you are accurate and honest about what expectations to get from that. So a good example is if you want to do anything related to a more realistic art style or design, particularly in live action film and a lot of the more current gen video games, then it goes without saying that you have to constantly practice and update your understanding and skill in drawing fundamentals. So anatomy, lighting, perspective, composition, observation of real life and the details that come in the objects that we see. So that's an absolute. Now, all artists would agree and say that you have to practice your fundamentals regardless. But in particular, if that is your goal towards that end of realism where there's less room for error and viewers are less forgiving, then you have to practice those things. But if you're not willing to, then it's not reliable, or it's not accurate. It's not fair for you to expect the type of response that demands that kind of training. So there's that disconnect between what you want or think you want versus what you have to do and the work you need to put into it. So it comes down to having a real honest and accurate understanding and appraisal of yourself as a person, as an artist. I've talked about that before, but it's very important because that will alleviate a lot of unnecessary frustration and pain, but it also give you a better idea of how to approach your career and who your audience is. If we see something just at face value, then we miss a bigger point inherent in that. For example, these days we see a lot of the younger artists. Let's say a good example is Lois. Lois, she goes by the pen name Lois H. And she's a younger artist, and she's very popular. She's very good. And her main, I guess, key element of her artwork is she draws female, like characters and faces, in a particularly stylized way, with a lot of color, bright and saturated color. So if we just take that in a very mechanical definition and go, oh, wow, if I do that too, then I'll be just as popular as Lois. No, you will not, even if you have the skill. And the reason I say no, you will not is because that's not how she's viewing it. She's doing what she loves, and she wants to get better at that thing, so she's practicing everything related to that. But it's because it's something she is personal to her. she's managed to find a wide audience that also enjoys it, right? It's backwards if you try to approach it from anything other than the art or personal standpoint, because it defeats the whole purpose. When I was a kid, I remember I would listen to some songs on the radio and then play it back on the piano, and I would say to myself, hey, oh, this is pretty easy. I could do that when I grow up. That's a very naive and narrow observation. Because, first of all, it's only focusing on that moment, that short term, hearing that melody and playing it, right? But it's completely disregarding the bigger picture of, first of all, coming up with a melody is not the same as being able to play it. That's the first thing. But even before that is that artists, that musicians' passion and personal desire to create that music, and out of that they created this melody. And that's way beyond those few seconds that you're hearing. It's the time and thought and experience growing up and practicing and formulating eventually that song. And so our art is, or anything creative, is the same way. The key is to be really honest with yourself, both in terms of your strengths and weaknesses as an artist, but what inspires you and what brings you joy. And you don't have to be apologetic about it. Especially at this point in my career and in my life, time is becoming more precious, as I've mentioned in the past. So I'm unapologetic now about what I do. Even if I don't say it, it's pretty obvious in recent times, especially in the recent years, past year or so, the type of art I do, which tends to all be stylized, which tends to be character focused, which tends to be a blend of science fiction and fantasy mixed with Asian culture and martial arts, right? So, there are times where I go back into, certain habits about being practical, like, oh, I should try something else to expand my portfolio or my skill set. And I still think that's true, but I don't let it maybe dominate as much as it used to, because the question I forgot to ask myself was, what's the reason I'm doing it? Before, it was to kind of maintain or increase chances for clientele, as a freelancer. But now that's not an issue. I'm not hard up for finding work. If anything, I've been turning down work because I'm, quite frankly, tired of working for other people. They're great people and great projects, but it's about time I start doing my own thing just for myself. And so that's now the question that comes up more that I ask myself. And sometimes I have to remind myself to ask that question. And so I think in the same way, yes, it's going to happen. It happens to me too. And it happened recently where I'm looking at all this art and I'm like, oh, this person's amazing. And this is oh so unique. Oh my goodness, they're half my age. I just I can't imagine how great they're going to be 20 years from now. And that's just natural. But again, the key is not to dwell on it. Rather use that time and energy to pour it into what you love doing. And as long as you have an open mind and you keep your ego in check. And the key is, if you're passionate about your art, that usually also means you're open-minded to other art and to learning from others. And that only helps you in your craft and enjoy it even further, both in skill and in your creations. And that will kind of also gauge where you prioritize making practical choices about jobs and work. It'll all work itself out, whether you are able to do art as a career, or if you have to take jobs that are art related but are not exactly what you want, or if you're struggling and you're just taking a job to pay the bills. As long as you have the time and energy to still create your art and enjoy it, that's the common thing that we all share. And if we're fortunate enough, like myself, to actually make a living off it, great. But if not, it shouldn't stop you from doing it, because remember, what was the whole reason to do it in the first place is because of the personal satisfaction and joy you get from creating art and expressing yourself through it. I just remembered one more thing, actually. I think be careful. There's a difference between saying, I'm not going to let that bother me that other people are better or what people say because I don't care, right? Versus, I'm not going to let it bother me and sidetrack me because I'm going to focus my time and energy on doing what I love. There's an inherent difference in there, because the first one is kind of more defensive and maybe even prideful, right? Because the thing with that kind of attitude is there's the other side. It may protect yourself, but the other side is you will miss out and be less open to others who have a lot to share and have a lot of great skill and knowledge. But if you, again, remember and focus more on, I'm doing this because it's something I enjoy and it's personal, it's authentic, then because of that, that is the strength that's helping you and not feel whittled down or torn down by the thought or demoralization sometimes of feeling that, oh, there's so many better artists than me, right? So there's a difference there. It's not out of kind of being indignant or prideful or defensive that I'm not going to let the fact that there's quote unquote stronger artists out there bother me. Instead, turn it into a positive, because then you'll allow yourself to be inspired by them, appreciate what they have to offer, learn from them, which in turn causes you to be both a better artist and a person. And that's a win-win in that case. So it's always central to being honest about your passionate pursuits. That's the easiest way to look at anything that comes your way in life, whether it's feeling demoralized or rejected, or career choices, or how you interact with other artists, and how you perceive them. It's all stems from that outflow of how passionate you are about your art and how much of a priority you make it. So that's one more thing I wanted to add there. And as always, I hope it's helpful to at least a few of you. And again, the reason I do these things is again, it's just another outlet, a creative outlet for myself that I enjoy doing. And with that attitude of, if one or two people can relate to it, then it's worth posting. I'm not here to, try to be a big YouTuber or something like that. It has to, just like the art, it has to be done in an authentic way. It has to be done because it's something you want to do, and not for some kind of any other ulterior motive that's higher than that. And so that's why I do it, and I'll continue to do it so long as I feel like doing it. And I hope, again, if you enjoy it, and then all the more reason. So again, thanks for listening, and until next time, take care.